Okay, so I've coached hundreds of actors and I see a common thread. The number one mistake, so to speak, in my opinion, that I think actors are making is that they are overthinking the process. Now, there's overthinking and there's overcooking. Overcooking is doing too many things. Overthinking is thinking too many things. Those two can tie together, but let's talk about overthinking specifically. So a lot of actors use what's called text analysis, scene analysis, script analysis, whatever you want to call it. This comes from traditional acting techniques. So what happens is actors go through the script and they start writing down tons and tons of stuff related to the story and the characters. And they end up having too many things in their head, in my opinion. They've got the dialogue, and then they've got the breakdown in their head, and the character description, and they've got the tone of the show and the description of the show. They've got the super objective of the character, and the scene objective, and the obstacles, and the conflict, and the relationship, and the backstory, and the setting, and the beats, and the actions, and the intentions, and the subtext, and the inner monologue, and on and on and on. Now, this table work, as it's called, can be important. I think especially when you have a lead role in a large production, if you are doing theater, which is where this type of stuff actually even comes from, sometimes it can give people confidence that they understand the character and the story and the world and all that kind of stuff. And it does work for some actors. But I think for auditioning, it's just way too much stuff. It's way too much stuff. And what it's doing is focusing way too much energy on thought as a way to approach performance. Now, in my coaching, I talk about the three major areas that are actable, and that's thought, emotion, and behavior. And so all of that text analysis stuff basically falls into the thought category, and then actors kind of assume that it's going to lead to emotion and behavior that is actable and playable and compelling and real, when in fact, a lot of the time, in fact, most of the time, I'm seeing it be counterproductive, at least in the actors that I'm coaching. And they're coming from theater schools and they're coming from these, intensives and these studio programs to basically be themselves on camera and do something compelling and interesting and authentic. They're almost having to unlearn this process because counterintuitively, a lot of the techniques that preach this type of process talk about doing all that work and then throwing it away and kind of leaving it at the door. But I think there's this lasting effect where it's just floating around in their head and they've written all this stuff down and they've got multiple scripts that they've memorized in their head, so to speak. It takes guts. It's a risk to actually not write down all that stuff and know all that stuff and actually approach performance from a place where you have a basic understanding and you trust your impulses and instincts and that you would make discoveries in the scene and that you can play moment to moment and bring yourself to the scene and all those things without all that text work. And I think that's why a lot of people would avoid a process that it kind of goes opposite to that. And I think that's what scares people about not doing that kind of stuff. If you're one of these actors where you're like, I'm doing all this work and I just feel like, I don't know if my work is compelling or if it's landing on anyone, or I just don't feel confident in what I'm doing, or I feel like I'm in my head all the time. If that's you, then maybe rethink this entire process that you've been using. Okay? It's a big deal. It's a paradigm shift, but it could totally help you. Just a little food for thought, actors. As always, stay curious. Let's evolve the craft.